I didn't think it was going to be one of those nights. You know, the kind where something small slips out of your mouth, everyone laughs, and then somehow it mutates into something that changes everything. It was just supposed to be a normal Saturday night. We were at Jason and Marissa's place out in the suburbs, one of those newer developments where every house looks like it came out of the same catalog. Clean driveways, trimmed lawns, soft yellow porch lights. Their place always smelled like vanilla candles and whatever Marissa had baked earlier, and there was always music playing low in the background, something easy and inoffensive. My husband, Eric, had driven us there in silence. That should have been my first clue. We hadn't been fighting exactly, but things had been tight, like a rubber band stretched just a little too far. Every conversation felt like it could snap if one of us said the wrong thing. And lately, I had a talent for saying the wrong thing. Inside, people were already there, couples mostly, familiar faces. Wine glasses, beer bottles, someone mixing cocktails at the kitchen island like they were on a cooking show. Laughter bounced off the walls, and for a minute, I let myself relax into it. This was our group, our people, or at least I thought they still were. Eric immediately drifted toward the guys in the living room, something about a game on TV. He didn't even look back at me. No hand on my back, no quick smile, nothing. Just gone. I grabbed a glass of white wine and found Marissa near the kitchen, and she hugged me tight. "You okay?" she asked, pulling back just enough to look at my face. "Yeah," I said automatically. Why wouldn't they be? She gave me that look, the one that said she didn't believe me, but she wasn't going to push. Not yet. "I'm glad you're here," she said instead, squeezing my arm. I nodded, took a sip of wine, and forced a smile. For a while, everything was fine. Conversations overlapped, people moved in and out of rooms, someone turned the music up a little louder. I laughed when I was supposed to. I told a story about work that got a decent reaction. I felt normal. But every time I glanced over at Eric, he wasn't looking at me. Not once. At some point, we all ended up gathered around the big dining table. Plates half full, glasses refilled too many times, that warm buzz settling in where everything feels a little looser, a little easier. Someone made a joke about marriage. I don't even remember who started it. It was one of those generic, throwaway comments about how men never listen or how women always have a list of complaints. The kind of joke people make when they've been together long enough to pretend their problems are funny. Everyone chimed in. "Tell me about it," Marissa laughed. "Jason still thinks I'll do it later is a real plan." "It is a plan," Jason shot back. "It's just a flexible one." Laughter around the table. Another couple added something about forgetting anniversaries. Someone else joked about snoring. It was light, harmless, the usual back and forth. And then someone looked at me. "What about you guys?" I think it was Ben. "You two always seem, I don't know, solid." Solid. The word hit me in a weird place. Because from the outside, yeah, we probably did look solid. No big public fights, no dramatic scenes. Just two people who showed up together, left together, paid their bills, and didn't cause a scene. I smiled because that's what you do. "Oh, we're great," I said, and even I could hear the slight edge under it. I mean, I joke all the time that I probably need a new husband, but I laughed as I said it. I really did. I expected laughter back. And I got it, at first. A couple of people chuckled. Someone said, "Careful, Eric's right there." It was that kind of joke, easy, disposable. But I kept going, because something in me didn't want to stop. "But honestly, I feel like I've been putting in an application for a replacement for years now," I added, swirling my wine like it was part of the performance. More laughter, louder this time. It felt good for half a second, like I had control of the room, like I could turn whatever had been building inside me into something funny, something harmless. I finally looked at Eric. He wasn't laughing. He was just sitting there, leaning back slightly in his chair, one hand resting on his glass, watching me. Not angry, not even annoyed, just still. And then he spoke. "Yeah," he said, his voice calm, almost too calm. "You probably should." It took me a second to process it. The laughter around the table faltered, like someone had turned down the volume. I blinked at him. "What?" He didn't raise his voice, didn't smile, didn't soften it. "You've been saying that for a while," he continued, looking directly at me now. "Might as well follow through." The room went quiet, like actually quiet. No background chatter, no clinking glasses. Even the music from the other room suddenly felt too far away to matter. I felt my face heat up, but I forced a laugh. "Okay, wow," I said. "That was dramatic." I expected him to backtrack, to smirk, to say he was kidding. He didn't. "I'm not being dramatic," he said. "I'm agreeing with you." There was something in his tone that made my stomach drop. It wasn't anger, it was certainty. Jason shifted in his seat, clearly uncomfortable. Marissa looked between us like she was trying to decide whether to jump in or stay out of it. All right, hey, Ben said, attempting to lighten it. I think we've all had enough relationship talk for one night, right? But Eric didn't look away from me. You joke about it in front of people, he said, still calm. At dinners, at parties, with friends, with coworkers. I need a new husband. I deserve better. If I could trade him in, I would. Each phrase landed like a small, precise hit. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. Because he wasn't wrong. I figured at some point, he went on, you weren't joking. My chest tightened. I am joking, I said quickly, my voice sharper now. It's called humor, Eric. People do it all the time. Yeah, he said. Usually it's funny. That stung, hard. I didn't realize I needed your approval on my sense of humor, I shot back. You don't, he said. But if the joke is always that your husband isn't good enough, eventually people start to believe you. The silence in the room got heavier. I could feel everyone listening, even the ones trying not to look like they were. That's not what I mean when I say it, I said, my voice tightening. You know that. He tilted his head slightly. Do I? That one question hit harder than anything else. Because for the first time, I wasn't sure. I crossed my arms, defensive now. You're seriously doing this here, in front of everyone? He glanced around the table briefly, then back at me. You started it here. My heart was pounding. I could feel it in my throat, in my ears. I made a joke, I said. You're turning it into something it's not. No, he said quietly. I think I'm just saying the part you don't. That was the moment I realized I'd lost control of the room, completely. This wasn't playful anymore. This wasn't a back and forth. This was something else entirely. Something that had been sitting under the surface for a long time and had just cracked open in front of everyone we knew. Marissa finally spoke up.
Hey, she said gently, maybe we should just... I'm not trying to make a scene, Eric interrupted, still not raising his voice. I'm just tired of pretending I don't hear it. My throat felt dry. You're overreacting, I said, but it came out weaker than I wanted. Am I? He asked. And again, I didn't have a clean answer, because if I was being honest, even just with myself, I had been saying those things more often lately, not just as jokes, but as something else, something sharper, something real. I looked around the table, hoping for backup, for someone to laugh it off, to shift the energy, to rescue me from the weight of what was happening, but no one did. They all just sat there, watching, waiting, and in that moment, with every eye in the room on us, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not anger, not embarrassment, something worse. Exposure, like everything I'd been brushing off, minimizing, disguising as humor, had just been dragged out into the open, stripped of its laugh track. Eric leaned back in his chair again, finally breaking eye contact. I mean it, he said, almost casually now. If you think you need a new husband, you should go find one. No sarcasm, no bite, just final. And that's when the silence turned from awkward to suffocating, because it didn't feel like a joke anymore. It felt like the beginning of the end. No one said anything for a few seconds after that. It felt like the entire room was holding its breath, waiting for one of us to laugh, to break the tension, to rewind everything back to something safe. But neither of us did. I picked up my wine glass just to have something to do with my hands, but I didn't drink. My fingers were shaking too much, and I didn't trust myself not to spill it. Okay, I said finally, forcing a tight smile that felt glued to my face. That got weird fast. A couple of people gave small, uncomfortable laughs, like they were grateful for any attempt to move on. Yeah, Jason said quickly. Let's not turn this into like a therapy session or anything. Exactly, I added, latching onto it. It was just a joke. But Eric didn't jump in to agree this time. He just sat there, looking down at the table, slowly rolling his glass between his hands like he was somewhere else entirely. That somehow made it worse, because I could handle him arguing back. I could handle irritation, even anger. But this detached, quiet version of him felt unfamiliar, and honestly, a little scary. Marissa stood up abruptly. Okay, I'm getting dessert, she said, a little too brightly. Who wants cheesecake? Hands went up, voices chimed in. The room started moving again, like everyone had silently agreed to pretend that nothing had just happened. Plates shifted, chairs scraped, conversations restarted in fragments. But the energy had changed. You could feel it in the air. I leaned closer to Eric, lowering my voice. What was that? He didn't look at me. What do you mean? That, I said, trying to keep my tone controlled. What you just did. I answered your joke, he said simply. That wasn't answering a joke, I snapped under my breath. That was something else. He finally turned his head slightly, just enough to glance at me. "You're right," he said. It was. The way he said it made my chest tighten again. "Can you not do this right now?" I said. "We're at someone else's house." "You didn't seem too concerned about that 5 minutes ago," he replied. I clenched my jaw. "Because I wasn't attacking you." His eyes met mine fully now, and there was something in them I hadn't seen before. Or maybe I had, and I just ignored it. "You weren't?" he asked. I opened my mouth, but Marissa came back with plates, setting them down in front of everyone, like a distraction she was desperately hoping would work. "Okay, cheesecake for you, and..." She paused slightly when she reached us, her smile faltering for half a second before she placed the plates down anyway. "There we go." "Thanks," I said quickly. Eric gave a small nod but didn't say anything. The rest of the night blurred after that. People tried, they really did. Conversations picked up again, louder than before, like everyone was overcompensating. Someone put on a different playlist. Ben started telling some long story about a disaster at his office, and people laughed at the right moments. I even laughed, but it felt hollow. Every now and then, I'd catch someone glancing at me, or at Eric. Quick looks, quickly pulled away, like we'd become the thing in the room nobody wanted to stare at for too long. Eric barely spoke for the rest of the night. He answered when people talked to him, nodded, even smiled once or twice, but it was all surface level, like he was checking boxes. And he never looked at me again, not once. By the time we left, I felt drained. Not just tired, but emotionally wrung out, like I'd been holding my breath for hours. We said our goodbyes at the door. Hugs, quick smiles, the usual. "Text me when you get home," Marissa whispered to me as she hugged me. I nodded, even though I knew I probably wouldn't. Eric was already halfway down the walkway by the time I stepped outside. The air was cool, the kind that hits your skin and wakes you up a little. But it didn't help. The drive home was quiet. Not the comfortable kind of quiet, the heavy kind. The kind where every second stretches longer because you know there's something sitting between you, waiting to be said. Streetlights passed in steady intervals, casting brief flashes of light across Eric's face as he drove. His expression didn't change. I watched him for a while, then looked out the window. "You embarrassed me tonight," I said finally. "There," I said it. He didn't respond right away. "I embarrassed you?" he said after a moment, his voice even. "Yes," I said, turning toward him. "In front of everyone. You could have just laughed it off or talked to me later. You didn't have to do that." "Do what?" he asked. "Make it a thing," I said. "Turn it into some serious conversation in the middle of dinner." He let out a small breath through his nose. Not quite a laugh. "It already is a thing," he said. "No, it's not," I shot back. "You're making it one." He shook his head slightly, eyes still on the road. "That's the problem," he said. "You think it's nothing." "Because it is nothing," I insisted. "It's a joke. People joke about their spouses all the time. It's normal." "Not like that," he said. I crossed my arms. "Oh, so now there are rules for what kind of jokes I'm allowed to make?" "It's not about rules," he replied. "It's about what you're actually saying." "I'm not saying anything," I said. "It's not that deep." He glanced at me briefly. "It is," he said. "You just don't want it to be." That hit a nerve. "Why are you acting like I've been attacking you for years?" I said. "That's such an exaggeration." "Is it?" he asked quietly. "Yes," I snapped. "It is." He didn't argue after that, and somehow that made me more frustrated, because it felt like he'd already decided something, and I wasn't part of that decision. We pulled into our driveway a few minutes later. The house was dark, quiet, exactly the way we'd left it. He turned off the engine but didn't get out right away. Neither did I. The silence inside the car felt even heavier than before. "You really think I want a different husband?" I asked softer now. It wasn't sarcastic this time.
It was real. He stared straight ahead for a few seconds before answering. "I think you like the idea of it," he said. My chest tightened. "That's not the same thing," I said. "No," he agreed. "It's not." I swallowed. "So what, you've just been, sitting on this?" I asked, waiting for a moment to throw it back at me. He finally turned to look at me fully. "I've been listening," he said. Something about that answer made my stomach drop. "Okay, and?" I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "So what if I make a few jokes? That doesn't mean I don't love you." "I didn't say you don't love me," he replied. "Then what are you saying?" I asked, frustration creeping back in. He held my gaze for a second longer, then looked away again. "I think you don't respect me," he said. The words landed hard. "Wow," I said, letting out a short, disbelieving laugh. "That's a huge leap." "Is it?" he asked. "Yes," I said immediately. "It is. You're twisting things." He shook his head again, slower this time. "I don't think I am," he said. I felt my defenses rising, fast and sharp. "You're taking a stupid joke and turning it into some kind of character assassination, I said. That's not fair. He opened the car door. I don't want to argue about it tonight, he said. And just like that, he stepped out. I sat there for a second, stunned. Because that was it? He just ended it like that? I got out of the car a moment later, slamming the door harder than I meant to. Of course you don't, I called after him as he walked toward the house, because that would require actually talking about it. He didn't respond, didn't turn around. He just unlocked the front door and went inside. I followed him in, my heart racing again, anger bubbling up to cover everything else. The house felt different, colder. He kicked off his shoes, set his keys down, moved through the space like everything was normal, like we hadn't just cracked something wide open in front of a room full of people. Seriously? I said, dropping my purse on the counter. You're just gonna act like everything's fine now? I didn't say everything's fine, he replied, heading toward the hallway. Then what are you doing? I demanded. He paused, his back still to me. I'm going to bed, he said. I stared at him. You've got to be kidding me. I'm tired, he said. Tired? I repeated. That's what you're going with? He turned his head slightly, just enough for me to see part of his face. We can talk about it tomorrow, he said. No, I said immediately. We're talking about it now. He was quiet for a second, and then he said something that made everything inside me go completely still. I don't think talking is going to fix this. The words hung in the air, heavy and final, and for the first time that night, I felt something cut through the anger. Fear. Real, sharp fear. Because whatever this was, it was bigger than a joke. And I was starting to realize I might not have as much control over it as I thought. I didn't sleep that night, not even a little. I lay there next to him, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet hum of the house and the occasional shift of his breathing. He fell asleep fast. At least it seemed like he did. Or maybe he was just pretending. I couldn't tell anymore. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed it. The table, the laughter, my voice saying it so casually, like it didn't matter. I probably need a new husband. And then his voice, cutting clean through everything. You probably should. It didn't sound angry in my head anymore. It sounded worse. Resolved. That was the word that kept coming back to me. Resolved. Like he'd already made up his mind about something long before that night, and I had just walked straight into it without realizing. Around 3 a.m., I turned onto my side and looked at him. His back was to me, facing the edge of the bed, one arm tucked under the pillow. There was a gap between us that felt bigger than the mattress. I thought about reaching out, just putting my hand on his shoulder, saying his name, forcing something, anything, to break. But I didn't, because I didn't know what he'd say, and for the first time in a long time, I wasn't sure I'd like the answer. So I stayed still. Morning came too fast. The light creeping in through the blinds felt harsh, like it didn't belong in a house that still felt so heavy from the night before. I must have drifted off at some point because the next thing I knew, I heard the shower running. Eric was already up. I sat up slowly, my head pounding, my mouth dry. For a second, I just sat there, trying to figure out how we were supposed to move forward from whatever that was. Because there wasn't a clear script for this. No big blowout fight, no screaming match. Just a few sentences that landed harder than anything we'd ever said to each other. The shower turned off. I got out of bed, my legs feeling heavier than they should have, and walked to the bathroom. The door was slightly open, steam drifting out into the hallway. He was standing at the sink, brushing his teeth, like it was any other morning. Hey, I said. He glanced at me in the mirror, then back at the sink. Hey. That was it. No tension in his voice, no edge. Just normal. It felt wrong. You're up early, I said, leaning against the doorframe. Yeah, he replied, spitting into the sink. Couldn't sleep much. Same, I said. Silence again. I waited for him to say something, anything, to pick up where we left off, to acknowledge that last night had happened. But he didn't. He rinsed his mouth, wiped his face with a towel, and moved past me into the bedroom like we were just continuing a regular day. Something inside me tightened. Are we really not going to talk about it? I asked, following him. He opened his closet, pulling out a shirt. We will, he said. I just don't want to do it before coffee. I let out a short, frustrated breath. That's convenient. He didn't respond. He got dressed, grabbed his phone, his keys, all the usual things. The routine was so normal it almost felt like a joke in itself, like the universe was messing with me. You're going out? I asked. Yeah, he said. Gonna grab coffee. Alone? The question came out sharper than I intended. He paused for half a second. Yeah, he said again. I crossed my arms. Since when do you go out for coffee by yourself on Sunday mornings? He looked at me then, really looked at me, and there was something guarded in his expression. Since I felt like it, he said. I opened my mouth, ready to push, but something in his tone stopped me. Not because it was aggressive, because it wasn't. It was closed, like a door that had quietly clicked shut. Fine, I said, stepping back. Go. He nodded once, like that settled it, and walked out. The door closed behind him with a soft click that somehow felt louder than it should have. I stood there in the middle of the living room, the silence pressing in again. And then it hit me. This wasn't just about last night. That had been the trigger, sure. The spark. But this distance, this shift in him, it had been building. I just hadn't wanted to see it. I moved to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the counter, staring out the window. When had things started changing? I tried to pinpoint it, but it wasn't one moment. It was a series of small things.
The way he stopped reaching for my hand when we walked into places together. The way conversations turned shorter, more practical. The way I'd started filling the silence with jokes, with little comments, with that same line over and over again. I need a new husband. Like it was harmless. Like it didn't mean anything. Except, maybe it did. I pulled out my phone, scrolling without really seeing anything, just trying to distract myself from the growing knot in my chest. And that's when I saw it. A message thread. Not new, not hidden, just there. Because he hadn't taken his phone with him, he'd left it on the kitchen counter. That alone was weird. Eric never left his phone behind. I stared at it for a long second. I wasn't the type to go through his stuff. I never had been. That wasn't our relationship. Or at least it hadn't been. But something about everything, the night before, the way he'd been acting, the quiet, controlled tone, it all piled up in that moment. And I picked up the phone. I told myself I was just checking the time, but I wasn't actually going to open anything. But my thumb hovered over the screen, and before I could stop myself, I tapped. It unlocked. No password change, no hesitation. And right there, near the top, was a name I didn't recognize. Emily. My stomach dropped a little. I stared at it, trying to place the name. Coworker? Friend? Someone from his gym? It didn't ring a bell. My thumb hesitated again. I could still put it down, pretend I never saw it. But I didn't. I opened the thread. The messages weren't what I expected. There were no obvious flirty lines, no hearts, no I miss you or anything like that. At first glance, it looked normal, casual. But the more I scrolled, the more something felt off. It wasn't what they were saying. It was how often they were saying it. Every day. Morning messages, midday check-ins, late-night conversations. Long ones. Way longer than anything he and I had had in months. I felt a slow, creeping heat rise in my chest. "What is this?" I muttered under my breath. I kept scrolling. There were jokes, inside jokes, references I didn't understand. And then I saw something that made my fingers go cold. Her. Did you tell her? Him. Not yet. My heart skipped. I stared at the screen, reading it again, and again. Did you tell her? Not yet. My mind started racing. Tell me what? About what? I scrolled up a little more, looking for context, something to explain it, to make it make sense. But the conversation had shifted after that, something lighter, deflecting, like they'd moved on too quickly, like whatever that meant, it wasn't something they wanted sitting in plain view. I felt my breathing start to pick up. No, I whispered. No. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be. Eric wasn't like that. He just wasn't. But then again, neither was this version of him I'd seen last night. Cold, distant, certain. I scrolled further, my hands shaking now, looking for anything definitive, anything that would prove I was wrong. But all I found was more of the same. Consistency, closeness, something that looked a lot like emotional intimacy, the kind that used to be between us. I heard a car door outside. My head snapped up. Panic shot through me. I quickly locked the phone and set it back exactly where it had been, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might actually make noise. The front door opened. "Hey," Eric called out. "Hey," I said, my voice barely steady as I walked out of the kitchen like nothing had happened, like I hadn't just seen something that changed everything. He walked in with 2 coffees. He handed one to me, like it was normal, like we were normal. "Thanks," I said, taking it. Our fingers brushed for half a second. And for the first time, it didn't feel familiar. It felt distant, like there was something invisible sitting between us now, something I couldn't unsee. I took a sip of the coffee, even though my stomach was twisted. "We should talk," I said. He nodded, setting his keys down. "Yeah," he said, "we should." I looked at him, really looked at him, and all I could think was, how much of you do I actually know right now? Because suddenly, I wasn't sure at all. We stood there in the kitchen for a second that stretched way too long,
both of us holding coffee cups like that somehow made this a normal conversation. It didn't. Nothing about this felt normal anymore. "Sit," I said finally, motioning toward the table. He didn't argue, just pulled out a chair and sat down across from me, the same spot I'd seen him sitting at 100 times before. But now it felt like I was looking at someone else entirely. I sat down too, wrapping my hands around the cup, even though it had already cooled a little. For a moment, neither of us spoke, and then I just went for it. "Who's Emily?" The shift in his face was subtle, but I saw it. A flicker. Not shock, not panic. Recognition. So he knew exactly what I was talking about. He leaned back slightly in his chair, studying me for a second before answering. "You went through my phone." It wasn't a question, it was a statement. I held his gaze. "Who is she?" He exhaled slowly, like he'd expected this moment, just not necessarily this morning. "She's someone I work with," he said. "That's it?" I asked. "Just someone you work with?" "Yes." I let out a small, humorless laugh. "You text someone you work with every day? Morning, night, in between?" He didn't flinch. "We talk," he said. "Yeah," I replied. "You do. A lot." Another pause. I leaned forward slightly, my heart picking up again. "Did you tell her?" I said, repeating the words I'd seen. "Tell me what?" His jaw tightened just a little. "You weren't supposed to see that like this," he said. My stomach dropped. "Like what?" He looked at his coffee, then back at me. "I was going to tell you," he said. "When?" I asked, my voice rising. "After what? After you figured out how to say it? After you decided if you were actually going to go through with whatever this is?" "It's not," he started. "Don't," I cut him off. "Don't sit there and tell me it's not what it looks like, because I'm not stupid." "I'm not saying you are," he said, still calm. That same calm that was starting to drive me insane. "Then say something real," I snapped. "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been building some kind of relationship with another woman while I've been standing right here." His eyes held mine. "I haven't slept with her," he said. The words landed, and for a split second, I didn't know how to feel about them. Relief? Anger? Neither felt right. "Wow," I said slowly. That's the bar now? You want credit for that?" "No," he said. "I'm telling you the truth." I shook my head, letting out a breath that felt shaky. "So what is it then? Because it doesn't look innocent." He was quiet for a moment, and then he said it. "I talked to her about things I can't talk to you about." It hit like a punch. "What does that even mean?" I asked, my voice dropping. "It means exactly what it sounds like," he said. "No, it doesn't," I shot back. "Because you're sitting here acting like I'm, what? Unavailable? Impossible to talk to? Since when?" He held my gaze. "Since you stopped actually listening," he said. That stung. Bad. "I listen," I said immediately. He shook his head slightly. "You hear me. That's not the same thing." I let out a sharp laugh. "Oh, so now this is my fault?"
"I didn't say that," he replied. "You didn't have to," I said. "It's pretty clear what you're implying." He leaned forward now, his voice still steady but firmer. "You want me to be honest? Really honest?" I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, I do." He nodded once. "Okay," he said. "I started talking to her because she didn't treat me like a punchline." The words sat there between us. Heavy, uncomfortable. "You think I treat you like a joke?" I asked, quieter now. "I think you've been doing it for a while," he said. "Maybe you don't mean it the way it comes out. Maybe it started as a joke, but it stopped feeling like one." I swallowed, my throat suddenly tight. "That's ridiculous," I said, but there was less force behind it now. "Is it?" he asked. "Yes," I insisted, but even I could hear the hesitation creeping in. He didn't push that point further. Instead, he said something that shifted everything again. I told her I was thinking about leaving. My heart dropped so fast it felt like I missed a step on a staircase. "What?" I whispered. His expression didn't change. "I told her I didn't think this was working anymore," he said. I stared at him, trying to process it. You told her that," I said slowly. "Before you told me?" "Yes." The honesty of it hurt more than if he'd tried to lie. "Why?" I asked, my voice barely holding together. "Because I didn't know how to say it to you," he said. I shook my head, disbelief flooding in. "So you say it to her instead? That makes sense to you?" "It wasn't about making sense," he replied. "It was about saying it out loud to someone." I pushed my chair back slightly, the legs scraping against the floor. "Unbelievable," I muttered. "I wasn't planning on it happening like this," he added. "Like what?" I snapped. "Like me finding out?
Like you getting called out in front of everyone and suddenly deciding you're done? His eyes flickered at that. No, he said. Last night just made it clear I couldn't keep ignoring it. My chest tightened again. I made a joke, I said, weaker now. That's what pushed you to this? It wasn't the joke, he said. It was what it confirmed. And what is that? I demanded. That you don't see me the same way anymore, he said. I stared at him. That's not true, I said, but it sounded hollow, even to me. Then why does it keep coming out like that? He asked. Over and over. In front of people, in private. It's always the same message. It's not a message, I insisted. It's just a habit, he offered. I stopped. Because yeah, maybe it was. But that didn't mean people have habits, I said. That doesn't mean they want to end their marriage over them. No, he agreed. But sometimes those habits come from something real. Silence filled the space again. I looked down at the table, at the faint scratches in the wood, trying to gather my thoughts. This is insane, I said quietly. You're talking about leaving me because of jokes and conversations with some coworker. I'm talking about leaving because I don't feel respected, and I haven't for a while, he said. The conversations with her just made me realize how different it feels when someone actually values what you say. That one got deep. I looked up at him, my eyes burning now. You think I don't value you? I asked. I think you used to, he said. Used to. The word echoed in my head. Wow, I whispered. He didn't soften. I didn't want it to get to this point, he added. I kept hoping it would change, that you'd stop, that we'd find our way back to whatever we had before. And you didn't think to. I don't know. Tell me, I shot back. Communicate. Isn't that what people are supposed to do? I did, he said. I blinked. When? Every time I told you something bothered me, he said. Every time I asked you to stop saying things like that. Every time you laughed it off or said I was being too sensitive. My mind raced back. Moments I'd brushed aside. Comments I'd made. His reactions. The way I dismissed them. It wasn't like this, I said weakly. It built into this, he replied. I leaned back in my chair, feeling like the ground under me had shifted. So what now? I asked after a long pause. He looked at me for a second. I don't know, he said honestly. That scared me more than anything else he'd said. You don't know, I repeated. No, he said. I know I can't keep pretending everything's fine. I know something has to change. I just don't know if it can. My chest tightened, panic creeping in around the edges. You're seriously considering ending our marriage, I said. Yes, he answered. No hesitation, no cushioning, just yes. Tears burned in my eyes, but I blinked them back, refusing to let them fall. Over this, I said. Not over this, he corrected, because of everything this represents. I shook my head, trying to hold on to something solid. We can fix this, I said quickly. I can stop with the jokes, okay? If that's what you want, I'll stop. We can talk more, He watched me, and for a second, I thought I saw something there. Not anger, not coldness, something closer to sadness. I don't want you to just stop because I asked, he said. I want you to actually understand why it matters. I do, I said, even though I wasn't sure I fully did. I'm trying to now. He didn't respond right away, and in that silence, everything felt like it was hanging by a thread. I need time, he said finally. My stomach dropped. Time for what? To figure out if this is something I still want to fight for, he said. The words hit harder than anything else, because they meant I wasn't the only one deciding anymore. Maybe I hadn't been for a while. And suddenly, that stupid joke, those careless words I'd thrown out so many times, didn't feel harmless at all. They felt like the beginning of something I might not be able to undo. I sat there, staring at him, realizing that for the first time since we'd met, I wasn't sure if he was still mine, and I had no idea how to fix that.